From prison to peer work, brought to you in partnership with the Pursue If You Want It nonprofit organization. Join us as we explore these powerful narratives that not only highlight the struggles, but also celebrate the victories of individuals who have used their past as a stepping stone to build a promising future. We delve deep into the lives of individuals who have turned their experiences into powerful stories of success through the strength of resilience and peer support. Stay tuned for episodes that promise to be as enlightening as they are inspiring.
Okay. What inspired you to transition from incarceration to becoming a leader in peer work and mentorship?
Honestly, bro, I think it was one thing kind of led to the next transition. So I was deeply inspired to not go back to prison. First of all, while I was in there. Secondly, it was the introduction to kind of peer values and the peer work was, I wouldn't say accidental, because I was on a path parallel to that already without necessarily knowing what it was called. So I was already doing the peer work. I'd already wrote like a curriculum. And then when I got to the halfway house a couple years ago and somebody had invited me down to a peer run organization called Peer Olympia, it just kind of led into this whole training, mentor, like one job. And then I started participating in recovery coach academies as like a trainee, So it just led into everything that's happening now.
Can you define, like, was there a pivotal aha moment, or was this something that kind of, I guess, over time it took you to realize, or um,
I'm a big empath, right? So a lot of the things that I experienced when I was incarcerated, I used to really take on the injustice of the entire situation with incarceration, the systems, just how people are charged, treated, and all that. So the aha moment really for me probably would have been like, I have a voice and they're listening. So what do I do with it? Do I continue to stay on this dark path where people are following me right through the revolving doors of the system? Or do I try to put chains and and wood barriers on that door and close it so that I go out and then nobody can go in behind me because they're listening to what I'm talking about. And what I'm talking about is growth and freedom, different kinds of freedom, because there's getting released and then there's becoming free. And they're two completely different things.
mhm, yeah, yeah, it's honestly been amazing to watch because I've seen both sides of it, and it's been real inspiring. It's inspired me. Um, how did it feel to win the Love In You Award? What does the recognition mean to you? But before you get into that, can you tell us a little bit about the origins of the award and how it was created?
Yeah, DJ Leva J was a phenomenal figure in our community at a really young age. I guess he was known to advocate for people, and he really just loved humans. All the stories, everybody that's ever come across him, it was a consensus pretty much across the board, right? This dude loved human beings, loved seeing people win. He was a DJ on the radio. He did a lot of shows, a lot of community gatherings, and just bringing people together. And he was highly educated. So, dude was like, I think three majors in Evergreen State College. He was just really one of those persons that always showed up. And so, without getting too farther into his story, uh, rest in peace, Leva J passed during COVID, from COVID and other underlying conditions. And so, in recognition of his immense love for the community, the mayor of Lacey actually dedicated December 19th, Leva J Day, forever and eternity. And his sister then created two separate awards to be awarded to individuals in the community for doing the great thing. So the one of the awards is the Bang Bang Award. It's like a resiliency award. Against all odds, you keep doing the thing, right? And then the other award was the Love In You Award, which is the award that I was the recipient of. So to answer your question, I didn't even know I was nominated for it until like maybe 48 hours prior. And then just hearing about it, the significance of it, um, it really reminded me of my relationship with Block. You know what I'm saying? And had I thought or been in that space, it could very well been a similar type of situation. So I really honored, I really felt honored receiving it, and I really resonated with his sister. Who continuously, this was their fourth annual um, award ceremony and celebration of Luvva J. So for me, it's just it's dope. Like really, like it's not something I strive for. So getting it was completely a surprise, but also I humbly acknowledge that leaders are in service,
Mhm.
and that's like we don't do it for awards or for accolades. So to get that type of recognition from a community I cause so much damage to is profound.
Yeah,
It's inspiring.
yeah, for sure. And it's an honor, just to be uh, associated with somebody who's done so much for the community. And you know, uh, how has your past shaped the way you approach your mission in 2025?
So, my story is my testimony. So the things that I've been through, the life that I've been able to navigate, whether through the judicial system, marital issues, um, you know, the loss of homies. COVID took some people I knew, but more than that, the opiates took a handful of people that I not only knew but were close with at some times. And what it really boils down to is if my past can be the fuel that gets somebody else going because they knew what I've been through. They seen it, they witnessed it, whether it was a news article or they heard it through a friend or they personally were involved with me when I was doing illegal activities out in the community. And then seeing the transition, if that can be fuel, if my story can be testament to somebody else's recovery, then everything I do is worth it.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's been amazing to watch. um, well, I'm not really on camera, but just because I avoid the camera, but I can speak personally that you've changed my life in major ways. I used to be one of these people that was running the streets with you and actually struggled with a lot of these things. So, um, yeah, I've done so many different things, and this is the first thing that's actually worked, and it's because of your mentorship. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you'll be on here. You have, we'll get him on camera.
What has been your biggest challenge in balancing all five roles you currently hold?
I mean, there's more than five hats I wear, but I think this kind of just highlights the five main ones, which is my job. It's also my heart's work. I work for Peer Workforce Development, doing DLC CPC trainings as the program manager. I'm also founding director of Pursue It If You Want It, which is a nonprofit in Thurston County, and we try to focus exclusively on justice impacted families and individuals, post reunification efforts, things of that nature. And then, of course, there's Coach B, which is my own, like that's me, that's my personal brand. Business wise, it's just a sole proprietorship, the anger management, one on one mentorships, coaching, parenting. Also, there's the Pursuit of Internal Evolution, LLC, which is more of our media kind of platform. There's a few of us, together. Uh, that LLC is more about events and things and more community engagement, and then putting out this free content of like become your best version of yourself. It's super easy and it's free. We're not asking you to sign up or get any subscription to any content. You can go to YouTube, go to podcasts, whatever, and get your fix, right?
Mhm.
And then lastly, but most importantly, is the hat I wear as a father and a husband. I've raised seven kids, still raising, half of them, and also, there's four grandbabies in the picture now. So um, the question is balancing. I'm gonna have to do it intentional. So for 2025, it's going to be about really being intentional about where my time goes, how it's spent, uh, not indulging in frivolous encounters and engagements, like not saying yes just to do it, but really being intentional and focused on like where is my energy and my focus going to best serve not only myself and my family, but protect my peace at the same time, be leveraged for the most impact in community healing and recovery and engagement.
Mhm.
So I don't know how I'm going to do
Mhm.
it, but it's on my agenda to focus. It's one of my high priority lists to manage time.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to manage time effectively.
Yeah, I try to figure that out sometimes too. Is how do you do it all? But
Yeah.
you manage and you get it done.
All right, go ahead.
Can you tell us more about the Peer Workforce Development DLC training program and its impact?
Yeah. So peer workforce development is an arm of Peer Washington, which is a peer-run organization in Washington State. And what Peer Workforce Development has done is they've partnered with the Healthcare Authority and DOC to bring in the 5-day certified peer counseling training inside of the prison so that there's actually a direct line that can tie people to employment after they get certified. So they get certified while they're incarcerated. They do the training. They have opportunity to take the exam. They pass the exam, then they're certified. And and just in light of some of like the evaluations of the trainings, the impact it's had is what we've heard so far. And mind you, there's been 24 trainings completed in Washington State prisons, and the overwhelming consensus is it's hope. It's bringing in hope. It's bringing in um, purpose, and it's bringing in something that the residents feel is tangible. So it's not some just run of the mill certificate that doesn't isn't transferable to a resume when you get out.
Mm,
This is actually something that they can take not only back to their units and back to their residency, and it's creating a culture within the prison, the more people getting certified, but also they can use it in the future for employment. They can use it with their relationships. Halfway through the 5-day training, the transition in their speech and saying, when they talk about, man, the phone call I just had the other night with my wife or with my kids, I was reading this book and I was listening and I was using these values, and it's like it's amazing. On its surface, I mean, peer support is basically values to being a better human, learning
mhm,
how to interact with people, meet people where they're at. Being trauma informed just means like be careful, right? You don't know
mhm,
what somebody's been through. So be careful when you engage with that. And you don't have to be certified or employed as a peer to uphold and live by peer values. So in the prisons, it's really creating an atmosphere of hope and inspiration. And eventually, I think the goal is for there to be a peer support program within, like self-running. They have their own peers. Eventually, they're even maybe doing their own trainings
mhm.
because, the people that are doing a long time, they can get paid as a job. And there's like one or two other states that are already kind of implementing this. So I'm hoping to follow suit.
Mhm. Yeah, the hope and inspiration is like the lifeblood of pure work, and I think it's the main thing that um, made it so I was able to have these drastic changes in my life. I honestly believe that if this had been available years ago, um, I wouldn't have been one of those people going through that revolving door. So it's something that was much needed in DLC, kind of an alternative. I'm not saying that the treatment that they offer in there is not useful or, because if it what works, then good for you. But it's awesome that they offer this now for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a treatment program, TC, Therapeutic Communities, which is where we actually started doing all of our trainings. And we just recently did two trainings back to back for the first time in a prison that doesn't have a therapeutic community program in it. So, but the thing about it is that treatment works if people buy in, right? But also, that treatment isn't a transferable state recognized certification that they could turn into a livable wage or even an entry level wage where they can get other opportunities, because doing this work is not glamorous. It's not going to take care of a 4 or 5 person family. But for somebody that has never worked, or for someone that didn't know that all the things that they experience could then turn into hope and inspiration and a means of income to support themselves and start their journey over, like that's a huge difference than just saying, oh, I was incarcerated and I did inside outside dads and I got this certificate. But that certificate doesn't transfer to a resume.
Hmm. Yeah, it might not make you wealthy, but it gives you soul food for sure.
Oh, there's value in it,
Yeah.
you know.
How do you approach training incarcerated individuals to become certified peer counselors?
So one of the first things we do is we create. So it's a 5 day training, right? And the training's roughly 40 hours, so like 30 plus hours. And so every day we're in the actual class for 6 to 7 hours, 8 hours sometimes, right? And I think how I approach it is, first of all, I come from where they come from. You know, I'm recently um, formerly incarcerated, so I'm closely tied to my lived experience and time and empathy, right? Like I feel it when I'm in there because it's very fresh. So my biggest approach is one of the first things I write on the board is no politics, right? And for those of you that know, prison politics are incredibly high stakes, right? People lose their lives behind prison politics. So we kind of create this agreements. Some people call them comfort agreements. Some trainers call them stretch agreements. Some call them living agreements, which is one of the terms I use is living agreements because those agreements are alive throughout the entire 5 days. You can add to them, you can take away from them. We revisit them to make sure the training goes, the certain type of way because you want this container to be a safe space. You want people that are absolutely positively not used to sharing and being open and being vulnerable to be able to do it in this 5 days so that they can really get not just the material, because learning the book is just your IQ, right? That's your intelligence. You can memorize words and then try to take an exam. But how I approach it is that peer support is 90%, in my opinion, emotional intelligence. So my approach is to allow them an opportunity to feel the curriculum so that it goes into their DNA and it's not just words they're trying to memorize. So excuse me. So that's what I try to create. I try to create a really tight, safe, brave container for 5 days where the last training was 26 men that are incarcerated and they're living a very tumultuous or rough life. The experience of incarceration is by no means positive. There's positive things you can do internally and externally, program wise, but the overall environment is melancholy, right?
Mhm.
It's depressing. And so to create a space where individuals can grow in their emotional intelligence and their awareness of feelings in a place where that's usually shunned and bad things could even happen to you for showing them, to me that's the ultimate success. That's the goal. That's how I approach the trainings inside of there.
So, do you encounter a lot of resistance initially, or is it?
um to be honest, no. So for lack of a better word, they are starved for programming.
Mm,
Not that DOC lacks programming, because there's a lot of programs in there and there can be a lot more, right? So um there's huge populations. So like Stafford Creek houses almost 2,000 residents, right? And the good, the great, the mediocre programs they have, it's not like everyone gets to do everything. So like even ours, there was hell of people that signed up when the memo went out for the certified peer counseling. And this was the first prison that we've done two trainings back to back. So one week, 28 people, and the next week, 26 people. We've never done that before. It's always been we go to this prison and then we go to this prison and then we had them on a rotation. So even with that, there's still probably over 100 people that submitted applications and just didn't make it because we can't fit more than 30 people in a class. It's part of the state certification requirements. The class amount has to be under 30 or less, right? So it's resistance wise, I don't really find a lot of resistance in these situations. What I do find though is, people signing up thinking it's like every other program. And this is something that they've shared, right? Thinking like, oh, I'll get this certificate. Oh, I'll impress my whoever, my girl, my mom, my DLC officer when I get out, my clemency, whatever it is. And so they go in with this agenda to just do the thing. But so far, knock on wood, every training I've been a part of, that has transformed into I want to do this for a living now. I signed up to get out of the unit or to just get a certificate. But now, after this training, after hearing everything that I've heard over the last 5 days, like, this is my new calling. This is what I want to do. I wish this was around, years ago, like you had just said. So, yeah, I don't see resistance, but I see like um, apprehensiveness, or there's no real expectation for it to be like great or different than any other type of program that they've had brought in. And then I'm able to, with the team, of course, change that perspective and allow them to feel the curriculum and then that hope, like reading those evaluations, like 100% across the board. The thing that pops out the most is hope.
Yeah. For me personally, that's kind of what happened. Was I'd gotten out of prison and you told me come down here and check this out, and if it's for you, then you know then give it a chance. And if it's not for you, then that's okay too. But just take a look. And when I came down there, and you know, you were mentoring me and kind of going through the Recovery Coach Academy and just meeting all the different people, it changed my life. And the main thing was, um, you had told me, you said, don't let somebody else write your narrative. You know, um, you're in charge of your story, your future, um, and you are whatever you believe you are. So
We are what we
yeah,
agree to.
yeah. So that changed everything for me. Where some of these programs that had been in DOC before, I always felt like they were force fed, and we were pushed into a certain way of thinking or believing, and that didn't work. So yeah,
Believe this or lose good time, essentially.
yeah. So it was a nice change in it, and just that hope, inspiration, but also the empowering individuals to you know you know make decisions and change and kind of pick a path forward.
Yeah.
hmm Um, what do you see as the future of peer counseling in prisons?
In Washington State, I would like to see, like I mentioned earlier, I would like to see a program inside where, long termers are getting certified, and then there's opportunity for employment while they're incarcerated to provide peer support, especially for like instead of catching someone off the chain, and that's like when they get off the bus, right? Instead of catching them and having their gang or their car rope them in and orient them to prison politics, have them go see, have them have their formal orientation with like the staff. A lot of times the superintendent will come in when people come off the chain bus and give their spill, right? And then schedule them a peer counselor to do all the actual, orientation of living and how to operate. And I think God willing, that Washington can be one of those places where that can happen, right? Where people can that are never getting out or just have an extremely long time have already done the work internally, and then we're able to certify them as state certified peer specialists, and then they can turn around and provide peer support while incarcerated for people that are incarcerated, especially helping some of those that will be going back out, right? So at least the people that may not see the light of day will be able to live in hope and knowing that they're inspiring others, and still able to have purpose and write that narrative, even if it's from, you know, behind incarcerated walls, which is always unfortunate. I hate even talking about it because, I think people change, man, and to give somebody a life sentence is, yeah, we're not going to get into that. That's just,
So when you were in the feds, you actually got to witness this firsthand because you were doing peer work even before you were
Yeah,
doing peer
yeah, I
work,
did.
and you got to see like how mentalities and attitudes change, and people were able to put politics to the side. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, when I was in the feds fighting my case, I actually wrote a curriculum. I'm sure many of you have heard this already, but yeah, the curriculum was called Pursuing Life After Crime Education. That was the acronym, and the whole thing was called A Better Place. And so while in there, I was able to facilitate two groups with 15 in each group, and we kind of did like a beta through the curriculum, just kind of tested it out, and it was like across the board, positive feedback. Obviously, there were some suggestions to make it better, but everyone that was involved wrote letters to my judge, like 30 residents, all fighting their cases on different, levels, wrote letters to my judge, because I didn't create the curriculum for that, for the purpose of like altering a sentence. I had never been to the feds, so I didn't even know that was a thing, right? So having created that, it was just something that came to me. I started working on it, sent it home. My homeboy's mom, one of my best friends, typed it up, sent it back in. So it was like typed. It was, it was a good starting point, a good foundation to what I'm doing now. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
this was multiple. This was 2 years before I released. So yeah, I seen it. I seen the whole atmosphere of a unit with over 100 people transition because people were involved. People were coming to my cell regularly, having me dispute like some of their relationship problems with a letter. Like, hey, I got this letter. Can you, help me respond or whatever? So I've always been in that space where people came to me for assistance, for support, whether it was emotional, moral, or I was a legal beagle. So people always want to bring their cases to me and have me help them do legal research or, stuff like that. So,
Why do you believe peer work is particularly impactful in the prison system?
um, personally, because when I was in there and I remember doing all kinds of programs and all kinds of classes, I never connected with no one. I never connected with any instructors, any trainers, any facilitators. And it was because DOC wasn't letting people in with lived experience. So you're coming into a place, and you're trying to teach us a thing about living life or about resilience or recovery or overcoming barriers, but you're not having those barriers. You haven't overcome those barriers. You
Mm-hmm.
haven't been in prison. You don't know what it's like. So I say that to say, peer support is particularly important in prison, because when you're able to send somebody into a prison who some of these guys were cellies with in another life, they're able to connect that hope. And Josh and I, and actually a lot of us, shout out to Katie Pratt. She's a wonderful trainer, right? And she taught me this thing, and I take it every training I am, right? And it's connection before content, right? So even before we open the book, we're introducing each other, we're telling stories, we're connecting on some level to each other, right? We have another saying in peer support where it says, don't be attached to the outcome. Lately, during one of these training sessions, I had an epiphany, and I thought to myself, engagement is the outcome. That's the only outcome that we can foreseeably be attached to is engagement. Because when you engage with someone, you're connecting with them.
Mm.
And when you connect with someone, usually it's because they're relatable. You have things in common. Peer support allows that space to happen in all the engagements that a peer support has, especially with prison. If someone's been to prison and they're going to provide peer support or peer support training, it's the fact that they can connect with that person's story. The fact that they can see themselves in that person is where the hope lives. And that's why, to me, it's that important to be a peer and to be allowed to kind of facilitate these conversations, because really the trainings are common. Like, we're both reading out of the same book, the trainer and the trainees. All right, we got the same manual, but it's really the facilitation of that engagement, having the curriculum connect with reality and real life experiences from somebody with lived experience. It's hard to hear somebody when you don't respect them or can't connect to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna learn from somebody you don't respect, and respect comes from shared lived experience in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Not only, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, that was actually the first, I guess, pivotal moment for me was when you had came into the prison,
Mm,
and that was the reason why I went was because of the connection and the fact that I know that I'd seen you like in a past life, and to see to hear about the transition and then the credibility you brought, knowing that okay, this dude's for real. You know what I mean? These are things that I know he's been through, and to hear about the changes and then to be able to witness them firsthand, that was the first, I guess, pivotal moment for me where it started me on this road forward. Um, what services do you provide through your private coaching business?
So yeah, one of the hats is Coach B, right? So Coach B 360 is the company, and so for me, it's my personal branding. It's who I actually am, right, in the community. I am Coach B, and so the credentials that I hold are Certified Anger Management Specialist 1 through NAMA, which is National Anger Management Association. I hold a Positive Indian Parenting Instructor certification. I'm also a CPC trainer, obviously, and I recently gained the Department of Behavioral Health and Recovery, also a branch of Healthcare Authority, status of a state approved mentor, which means I can mentee up and coming trainers through the process to become a state trainer. Um, and then I'm a recovery coach professional for CCAR, which is Connecticut Community Addiction and Recovery out of Connecticut. And so that's a national designation, recovery coach professional. And then at the F, I'm also a recovery coach professional facilitator, which means I can facilitate curriculum that CCAR puts out. Typically, it's the Recovery Coach Academy, which is a 5-day curriculum, and then people become recovery coaches, and then they're able to do the work, right? So privately, I offer mentorships not only as to become a trainer, but personal, like life coaching type
Mm,
mentorships. And I kind of let people check the boxes, right? I like to meet people where they're at, and their sessions are 100% tailored to whatever it is they want to lean on me for, right? So if they're wanting to work on some stress management techniques, and the session could be half that, and it could be half, hey, I just got a job as a CPC, and I want to have a session kind of about like what to expect. I'm really about workforce development, but also workforce longevity, like
mm,
helping people be their best version of themselves while doing a job that I help train them to become, if
mm,
that makes sense. And then, yeah, and then there's just, the typical life coaching sessions that people will want to indulge in, and just, setting goals, uh, creating healthier relationships, setting boundaries, um, and again, stress anger management for me is more about the emotional regulation part of it. In my opinion, is more about rewriting their behavior, because it's
Mhm.
not the emotions that are the problem, or when people say they have anger problems, right? Anger itself isn't a problem. It's when we experience it, how we react or respond to the stimuli of anger, right? Are we lashing out? Are we hurting people? Are we saying things we regret 10 seconds later, right? That's what I focus on. I focus on because we know anger, it's nature, right? Everyone's going to experience anger for various different things, but not everyone is able to not do something that they regret. So I focus more on that
Mhm.
aspect of it.
How does mentoring, peer support, and anger management intersect in your coaching philosophy?
My coaching philosophy is based on um, a twofold set of rules, which is a lot of people know about the golden rule, right? You treat others the way you want to be treated.
Mhm.
But for me, coaching, peer support, mentoring, parent instructing, it's all about the platinum rule, which is treat people the way they want to be treated, right?
Like that.
So all of my sessions, all of my philosophy is around the pursuit of internal evolution. So it's about how can you become the best version of yourself, right? How can you be okay and live in gratitude? I'll help you with the mirror see all the best things in yourself, right? And peer support, we just call it, uh, a strength-based approach. We're going to
Mhm.
highlight all the good things, all the things that you've done to where you're at, and we're going to build from that, right? So everything that happens between us, you're doing the work, right? I might show you some techniques, or with my credentialing, I know a couple of things about a couple of things, but at the end of the day, every person that sits before me is an expert on their lived experience. So, in order for me to treat somebody through the lens of a platinum rule, I have to engage with them. So, for me, engagement is the outcome. The more we engage, the more I learn about the person. The more I learn about the person, the easier it is to treat them the way they want to be treated. And
Mhm.
then it's about how do we get that person to treat themselves the way they want to be treated, right?
Mhm.
Because then it's a lot easier to set boundaries when you're treating yourself optimally, and you're treating yourselves like your favorite car and putting all the right things in your body, your intellectual nourishment, everything, right? When
Mhm.
you're the greatest vehicle you have, but we have a tendency to put more care into an external vehicle that we purchase from somebody than we do the vehicles that take us to that vehicle,
Mhm.
right? So that's where a lot of my philosophy and focus comes from, is getting back to remembering that everybody is their own authority over their own lives. Everybody is their own author over their own books and chapters, and I just try to help remind people of that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. What is the most rewarding part of working one on one with your clients?
Um, I get to witness a plethora of aha moments in
Mhm.
people, right? I get to be present when somebody makes even a little bit of internal evolution, right? When somebody decides and they make an agreement within themselves that take root, and they no longer do the thing they didn't want to do, like, to me that's the most rewarding, like witnessing somebody grow, witnessing somebody start to glow and do things that they didn't believe they can do, right? And then also is the random messages, I would say, is probably some of the most rewarding and things that I could like feel, um, is when people randomly message me that I don't know, right? And they're like, "Man, I've been following you, or I've seen this thing, and keep doing what you're doing because you don't know how many lives you're touching." Like when I get messages like that, it's like it's super rewarding. Or lastly, and another big one is I'll be like in a store with my son, right? And somebody will say, "Hey, I follow you on Facebook, and man, I'm so inspired." And then they'll walk away, and my son will be like, "Do a lot of people watch your stuff? I'm lucky to have a dad like you, huh?" Like stuff like that, man. It makes all of it like extremely worth it.
Hmm.
like straight up.
And the domino effect too. Like you see the change in the individuals, but also the domino effect of how it changes their families' lives. Like for me personally, like my, put my family through a lot of grief and anguish, just going through just different things in my life, and it hurt them a lot. But for them to see me now, you know what I mean? They're grateful to you. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah,
like, man, I'm glad that you took this route and that you spent so much time with B, and that he was able to mentor you because it's changed our lives too.
yeah,
So yeah, it's
yeah.
awesome.
And even hearing that is rewarding, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't sometimes you're not privy to all of the ripple effects, right? Like you might, like I said, I might run into somebody who's like, I almost killed myself. And you put this thing on Facebook, or you did this video on Facebook, or I watched somebody sent me a YouTube content of you saying whatever, and I didn't. That's it right there, bro. That's
Mhm.
it. The quality of life, the preservation of life is the goal,
Mhm.
right? The more lives that I can preserve, the better, even if I don't know, right? But yeah, hearing about those ripples in a positive way is always like it's always fuel, man. It fills my cup up so I can continue to pour into community.
Mhm. How do you market your private coaching to reach those in need of it most?
Um, I mean, there's Coach B, Facebook page. A lot of it just has to do with like when I'm in spaces engaging with people. I hand my card out. My card has a QR code on it. You know what I'm saying? So, as far as like marketing, like I don't have like funding like that. So I don't have like commercials, or I don't even pay for like the Facebook marketing or whatever. I just post stuff, and if people hit me up and they want to do the thing, um a lot of times it's like my personal stuff is sliding scale, and then I also have this commitment to myself that if somebody is coming to me for, let's say, anger management, right? Which these things they can charge anywhere from $35 a session to 100. I don't know. And they say I have to do this thing in order to get this no contact dropped, or to um, be in compliance to get my kids back, right? I'll do that shit for free,
Mhm.
because to me, like the reentry impact and post reunification family dynamics is highly important to the work. You can't talk about reentry without talking about, like you just said, your family being grateful to the person mentoring you, right? But the family could also get mentoring or assistance in bridging conversations and getting close together. You're going to get a bunch of tools. But for me, it's about the holistic approach. If somebody's out here and they're struggling and their kids were taken because they were incarcerated, and someone's saying they have to do these things, and I have those credentials, I'm not going to give them, like, I'm not going to sign off on nobody that didn't do the work, but I'll do it for free. But they
Mhm.
still got to do the work, right? So the value is still in them doing the sessions, and then they can go, present that to whoever they have to present it to in order to reunite with their kids or their wife or whatever the case may be. So for me, it's just case by case. And right now, it's a lot of word of mouth. Coach B, like if you really, whatever, I hear people hit me up all the time, and hey, I was referred to you by this, and a lot of it with reentry. My wife doesn't like that I do a lot of things for free, because it takes away from their experience with me. So like they burden the sacrifice uh, a lot.
Mhm.
My absence. If I'm pouring in the community, then I'm obviously not at home,
Mhm.
or you know,
Yeah. What led you to establish pursue it if you want it?
pursue it if you want it was always like an underlying thing. So even when I rapped, right, in 2018, I did a couple of albums, and my rap name, Be Active, people know. Under Be Active, my slogan, even when I rap, was always pursue it if you want it. So when I started to create the ideas and the philosophies around a nonprofit that I think would really suit me best and suit the mission. That's what it was. It was already there. It was already a part of my story, right? So pursue it if you want it, and then the reach for your dreams. Like that just became the name of the nonprofit, and but it's also a philosophy. It's a way of life, right? So all of it's tied together. Pursue internal evolution. Pursue it 365. But before all of that, you got to want it. If you don't want it, there's no point to pursuing anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because a lot of times we chase things we don't even want. So you really have to decide and do the internal work and find out what you want and then pursue it. And then pursue it every day. So that's the other, business is the Pursue It 365. It's all interchangeable logos, the same kind of thing. And it's just like if you take one small step, one commitment every day, every 24 hours, even if it's 5 minutes, if you read a page of a book every day, right? You're pursuing betterment. You're going inside and doing something that you haven't done to achieve something that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do it every day, and you can do it a little bit or you can do it a lot of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's really up to you, but you have to put in the work to get the things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I like the Pursue It 365 for sure. Because there's something you can do every day to better yourself or get where you need to go. What is the most rewarding part of work?
You already asked that question.
Yeah. Can you share a story of someone whose life has been changed by your nonprofit?
Yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to be honest, it's a good question. But because you're here, I'm gonna say yours. Because those stories aren't mine to tell. You know, so I'm sure there's if you go to on this actual platform from prison to peer work, right? There's plenty of stories where people were interviewed and their lives have changed um, a lot, you know, and I don't know if it's because of my nonprofit or because of their desire to change and then just the stars aligned, right? They were in a time where they were ready, and then there was this thing that helped support that, and I feel like that's in a nutshell what real support, natural support, formal support, whatever kind of support, it has to align with the person's desire
Mm-hmm.
to heal, right? To recover, to do better. And then if those things align, people are equipped to change their own lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You can't see me on camera, but I'm sure if a lot of these people could see me on camera, they would know, you know, my story. I've spent, the majority of my life incarcerated, um, over 20 years. And like I said before, nothing really worked. This is the first thing that's worked. And I'm happy. But what it was for me personally was it was um, the credibility of you, just knowing your journey and then seeing you have taken the steps forward and changed your life. That really inspired me. But also the support. You gave me a lot of support and encouragement, and that really pushed me forward. Just not having somebody support you and encourage you. So yeah, it was all those things. So it wasn't just a single thing that aligned, but a multitude of things um, that aligned for me, and it was I appreciate it very much. Um, what partnerships or collaborations are you pursuing to expand the nonprofit's reach?
Um, wow. There's actually so for 2025, when it comes to like pursue it if you want it, I've decided um, that it's best to just have quality individual community support for the families as they need it when they need it, opposed to trying to get big grants and try to be this big organization. I'd rather just be this small nonprofit and keep it nonprofit and whatever funds we have, you know, um, aside from operational funds or operational costs, but just having funds to be able to do community events, create spaces for people to request like specific funding, especially like one example I would use would be like somebody gets raided, they go to jail, the mom is distraught, right? There's kids involved, and then they get in touch with somebody who gets in touch with us, and we're able to like maybe pay for the kids' football registration or the daughter's cheer registration or boxing or something that would keep them busy, something extracurricular, something to help keep some type of structure, but then also come in and there's women on the board, there's women associated with this program that have that lived experience of being there when someone got locked up, and vice versa, men too, right? Women get incarcerated and they leave a man behind. It's not as common, but it happens, right? But
Mhm.
so being able to wrap around a family with just support, like
Mhm.
emotional support, like, hey, this is the process, the orientation for someone who's never experienced it or whatever, and being able to say, hey, it's going to be okay. Like, here are some things we can do. Here's some steps we can take. Someone might change from being a stay-at-home parent to now having to support the entire household because the other half that was supporting them is now incarcerated.
Mhm.
So that's more of my focus, and then partnering with other organizations like I stay in partnership. That's my extended tribe is Pure Olympia. So any type of resource that I can refer over there, I do. And also places like Healing Hearts Ranch. Christy's a good friend of mine. I look forward to collaborating with her. With Arms Around You is a nonprofit up north. Inner City, what is it? Inner City um, Action Network. So I can. Um, I want. I've already kind of partnered with them, and then there's a few. There's a few that I want to partner with, but I also, again, I want to be intentional about even the partnerships
Mhm.
because I don't want to be associated with anybody that's causing any harm or not doing the things that are conducive to recovery and community building because there are people out there that are just not doing that,
Mhm.
but promote it as if they are,
Mhm.
right? So I just want to be real intentional with my partnerships and make sure that they're all on the up and up, and that they care about people.
Mhm. What inspired you to start pursuing Internal Evolutions LLC?
Um, so Pi was actually something I had been playing with, the pursuit of internal evolution. When I came out and I did music again for the first time since being released, my album was called Internal Evolution, or Internal Evolutions with a Z on the end. So one day, man, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but it had been ruminating in my mind already, this concept. And then I sat down with Priscilla and we started talking about things, and it ended up becoming like a spur of the moment. I threw the idea out and was like, hey, look, everybody's got the tea, right? Everyone's on this negative shit. Like, you can sit in a conversation with somebody for an hour and a half as long as they're talking about their trauma. But as soon as they talking about how they achieve this or how they own this or how they survive this or whatever, that person becomes a tool and uninteresting, right? Someone will walk away from that conversation like, oh, this narcissistic, self-absorbed person, because it's like our society doesn't highlight growth.
Mhm.
It doesn't let you celebrate yourself. That's somehow a negative, right? So the concept was like, well, let's do a podcast. Let's do this thing, right? And we'll call it Pie Talk. Pie is the anecdote to tea. So let's talk about all things positive, all things you, not us, but you, all things you internally. All these different concepts and episodes were about different ways that people can grow their own worth, their own value. Quit seeking validation. Your self esteem is self, right? So let's create pathways to your brain and to your emotional intelligence so that you can start to rethink and rewrite the internal narratives about yourself. what's okay, what's not okay. It's totally okay to be selfish. In fact, it's encouraged. Even when they say all these things about self-care, intentional self-care, self-care is selfish. But the word selfish is attached to a negative, which doesn't make any sense to me. It never has, right? So, like I was saying, there's that whatever reason people can sit, go back and forth, and just share trauma story after trauma story after trauma story. But if someone's like 5 things in a row, oh, I just got this raise, oh, I just got this new car, oh, I just got approved to buy a house for the first time, oh, I'm in recovery, I'm doing so great, life is grand, I just mended a relationship, people are like get turned off by that. And I thought, why? I still don't have the answer, right? So Pi Talk is that space that we've designated to positive growth of self. It's really that simple. Because mathematically, to me, a negative is a minus. So that means if you're indulged in negativity, negative self-talk, negative tea, gossiping, all the things, you're taking away from the quality of your life and the life around those with you, that you're indulging in this negative. Positivity is a plus. So when you engage in positive engagements and conversations and you pursue things that feel good and look good morally, emotionally, whatever, then you're adding to the quality of life and potentially contributing to the preservation of life. Because when you can share space with somebody and they walk away feeling good, you have no idea if that person was thinking about killing themselves, for example, the extreme, right? And then they have this random engagement with you in a Walmart and you're positive and you say some dope shit to them and you give them a little bit of hope and they walk away from that engagement thinking, life isn't that bad. I'm actually not going to kill myself, right? You never know. You just never know. So I try to operate thinking of how my interactions are life-giving or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the podcast is the positive messaging, and also like the discussions. Like these are discussions that need to be had. Um, can you give us a sneak peek into some of the training sessions or events you're planning for the year?
Nope.
What does internal evolution mean to you personally and in your work?
So personally, I can. So this is what evolution to me, and internal evolution means something that is decided and you don't go back on it. Like you can't. Like something has been altered. Something has evolved. And the example I use is back in 2006, I was incarcerated with a buddy of mine, and we were smoking cigarettes, even though they weren't legal. Well, they had just pretty much. It had been less than 6 months when they took them out of the state prisons, so they were still there. Whatever. Long story short, it was around October. We had decided together, like me and my partner, we used to always like, it was kind of our joint business that we did in there, and we're like, man, New Year's resolution, we're not gonna smoke no more, right? So this to me is my first experience with acknowledging a level of internal evolution within myself. And it manifested like this. So October, I don't know the date this happened, right? So mind you, November, December, January 1st. So roughly 3 months away from when this resolution is supposed to kick in. Mid-November or even early November, but it was relatively close to making the proclamation that we're going to quit smoking for New Year's resolution, to when I went and hit a cigarette and coughed, and it was gross, and it no longer held any appeal to me whatsoever. It was as if I had never smoked. It almost made me throw up. Same tobacco, same everything. And I realized that's the difference between a promise and an agreement. And making an agreement is internal. and it grows from the inside out of you. And an agreement is what allows the space for evolution internally, right? Because for whatever reason, at that moment when I made that decision, it was an agreement, not a promise to him. It was an agreement with myself that I was not going to smoke. And my entire being downloaded that information and made the upgrade, made the evolution that cigarettes is no longer something we desire. So that's what I mean by like internal evolution. When you make an agreement that is so strong that from that point forward, it's a wrap. There's no going back to whatever behavior it was, whatever it is that you've agreed to change has now been rewired into your core belief system, like your hard drive has been overridden. That is what internal evolution means to me. And in my work, I just try to support people in making as many of those evolutions as they want,
Mhm.
right, within themselves.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love the evolution part of it because it's not just about change, but it's the change with the growth. You know,
Yeah,
so you're evolving, you're
you're
becoming something
evolving.
better. Yeah.
Exactly.
How do you balance being a father and a husband with your professional responsibilities?
Um, Again, that's another thing where I'm trying to be intentional more so than ever. But at first, it was it was a lot because I had big, grandiose dreams, and pursuing them
Mhm.
requires a lot of like solidarity, right? Because there's not a lot of people that I can count that actually are invested in my dream,
Mhm.
right? And that's true for everybody. You're going to find that, entrepreneurs, business people, it's lonely at the top of your mountain when you're trying to get somewhere and nobody else understands that and they're taking it personal and it has nothing to do with them in a negative way. Like, if I'm moving in this direction, I'm obviously not moving in this direction, but the people in this direction aren't necessarily my enemies, or I'm not anti them. So, a lot of it with family, I think, especially with my wife, at first it was like, you know, we want you home more, or why are you doing this for free? Why is this so important? And I think we've gotten past that because the evidence of
Mhm.
why. But see, I'm big picture, macro worldview kind of thinker, right?
Mhm.
So when I was sitting in prison in 2020 during COVID, I wrote a plan, and part of the curriculum that I created was to do this particular thing, was to write this plan in as much detail as you could possibly think about, like down to the color of the post-its that I would use in my office. Like I really try to create a program that would make people think about things that they never thought about because you're taking them for granted. These are little things. Even my car choice, like, I'm in a Toyota Camry. When I had an option, I was approved for almost anything on the lot. I could have got the Lexus with the whistles and all the things, right? But for me, it was about longevity. What is more sustainable? What makes more sense? What will cost less gas if the gas prices go up? What has high security rate? Like all these different factors go into my decision making. And so when I make a plan that far out, I think for me, it was trying to convince my wife that like I'm on step 11 of step 365,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So just bear with me, understand like there's a process. I'm not just haphazardly doing things. It's focused, it's on purpose, it's intentional. I live my life intentional, and the things that are happening, some of them I didn't ever foresee happening, like getting off federal probation early wasn't part of the plan. Getting the award wasn't part of the plan. Um, even the job I have right now wasn't part of the plan, but it's parallel to the plan that I wrote.
Mhm.
It's in alignment with the path that I chose, the narrative that I started to pen. And now that I'm executing the steps, it's just furthering my um, belief in myself.
Mhm.
And when it comes to family, it's like whenever I'm in a car with my son, or I take my daughter, or any of my kids, I try to just be in the moment. Engagement is the outcome, even with family, right? If I'm not attached to all these other outcomes of other people's lives, or if I'm going to get this thing or not, I just engage with people. And recently coming to that conclusion has already created a little bit of evolution in me, because now I'm so focused on particular engagements. So the thing about potential and regret is, to me, they're two sides of the same coin, because neither of them live in the present.
Mhm.
One's dead and one's never come,
Mhm.
right? So I stay focused on engagement, because engagement happens right now.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that. How has your family supported you on this journey and transformation and leadership? I think you kind of touched on that, but could you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, my natural supports have been the biggest. And it's funny, I like that question, because this Christmas was the first time that my wife's family and my family actually came together, right? There's people in probably both sides of the family that weren't willing to give either me or my wife a chance based on our past and their experiences with us, because of how we were moving, right? My wife also has lived experience navigating the incarceral system. And so to be able to have a Christmas Eve party with her entire family and my entire family, and we didn't have to go do one over here one day and then one over here the next day, is testament to just how much, when you change your narrative, you give people no choice but to either be a part of the new narrative or excommunicate themselves completely from you, because they're not willing to let go of the narrative that they were so stuck on for you,
Mhm.
right? And that's not your problem. And that's another thing I think people get caught up on, is somebody, gets out and then their family will only see them through the filter of how they've always seen them, and not be willing to see this new version. You know, one of the first things my wife said to me was, people don't change overnight. And I said, you're right. They change in a moment. As soon as they make that decision, and every time after that, they're moving in the direction of that new decision, then they changed instantaneously in a moment. It's not overnight, but it will look like that if you talked to me yesterday and I made that decision after we got off the phone, and then you talk to me the next day. That's overnight, because from that day forward, I'm moving in this new way, right? And I've been moving this way since I made that internal evolution in 2019 or 2020 when I was in the federal prison. Nothing has changed since I made that decision, other than my priorities. My priorities are now focused on the quality of life, the engagement, the relationships, healing, um, no longer holding on to trauma. Like the way that I move now, it's just been a flow. It's not like I made this decision and changed my mind 4 or 5 times. Like, I've already done that. I've been released from prison 10 times or more, but I've only been free once
Mhm.
or twice, when I was born and now. From the time I was 12 until the time of recently, I was incarcerated in my head, and with warrants and with probation and with prison and with juvie and all the different things. And every time they let me out of a structured building, they were just releasing my body. But I was always incarcerated that whole time. Nothing ever changed, because the evolution didn't happen. When the evolution happened, you can no longer incarcerate me. Even if you framed me and put my body in a prison, I will not be incarcerated because I'm free and there's no going back. The veil's been lifted. You're not ever going to convince me to put myself in a cage internally. It's not going to happen. Once I decided to become on this journey of self mastery and not taking things personally and not letting other people's words or narratives affect me, that philosophy of you can't do this by whose authority, right? That's my internalized philosophy. Someone says I'm not allowed or I can't do a thing. I'm like, is there like some scientific, is it gravity stop? Like, what is the actual authority that's going to stop me from doing the thing?
Mhm.
Oh, it's your belief. That has no power here.
You hit the nail on the head. Like when you were saying the two times you've been free is when you were born and now. Like I guess in this moment right now, I kind of came to that realization. This is the first time I've felt free. I don't have that burden or that weight on my soul. And it feels good. What lessons from your personal life do you pass on to your children and mentees?
Um, any that they're willing to take. I mean, it's funny because when I won the award, Aries got on the mic and she had talked about me and her having a conversation because she had got really upset and she was trying to talk to me and I was like, hey, I'm going to break some things down to you. And I basically broke down to her about her amygdala and we called it her lizard brain, right? And I'm like, when you're really highly in your feels, you're not talking with your logical brain. I'm like, so you can't talk to me until you're calm and talk to me with your logical brain because you're high pitched, your tears in your eyes, you're crying. I was like, you're not emotionally sound to make good conversations and good decisions. I was like, so go calm down. And it was funny because after we had that conversation and she gets on the mic after I won the award, that's what she talks about. She was like, yeah, and then I get mad at my mom and my mom came down and she yelled at me and I was like, you can't talk to me because you're in your lizard brain right now. It's just like, all right. And then my older son like couldn't be more proud. You know what I'm saying? Like they're thriving. My oldest daughters, they're thriving. They're great parents. They're doing well. So and they live through the worst of it. Like I spent over half my adult life incarcerated, but all of my adult life until recently, I was mentally incarcerated and emotionally incarcerated. Like they've seen tumultuous relationships, they've seen raids, they've seen drug addiction. They've seen all kinds of things that, by all fucking, you know, standards, they would all have been incarcerated in some form or another, juvie or whatever, and they haven't. So I'm blessed that that's the case, and yeah, I just keep trying to move in my light, and hopefully it keeps shining on my kids, my wife, my community, the people closest to me, my mentees. I want people to really understand that, like, I don't do anything for anybody, whether they're a mentee, whether it's a training session, whatever it is. I try to empower people to do things for themselves and then prove it to them. Like, I didn't do, you did this, right? And so that's a little bit harder work because it's easy to just fix things for people. But I think what I learned in training peer support and living it is that sometimes that can cause more harm than good when you just take somebody's agency away from them and their ability to navigate a journey and triumph and celebrate milestones and set little goals and complete them when you're just like, oh no, here's your rent, or no, here's this, or no, here's that. Like it doesn't do the justice of treating someone the way they want to be treated, because if they had the choice and they could see the movie play out where they get support, 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 with, not for, and then see the end result versus here's four, 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 they would probably always choose with, because then they can do it when you're not there.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, it's like you have the tools and you can fix the problem, or you can support a person to develop their own tools, or use their own tools.
Yeah, I
And
can
like you
pull
said,
up
then
with the
there's no need.
Snap-on
Yeah,
truck
there's no
and be
need
like,
for.
here's a box of tools. I can show you how to use them, and we can read the instructions together, and then maybe we could build something together. But then I got to drive this truck off somewhere else. So
Mhm,
doing it that way, they're able to be empowered to
mhm.
build whatever they want.
And where do you see yourself in your various ventures by the end of 2025? What do you got in store?
Um, by the end of 2025, I think I'm just kind of in the moment. I haven't really, because so many things happen so fast already. For example, um, when I wrote my 5-year plan, it was supposed to start in 2025. And so that meant getting out, starting probation, pursuing this line of work, and doing all these things because that was my original release date. Having earned all this time off and got the judge to terminate my probation, I'm like minus 5 years into my 5-year plan. I'm like, I have all this time. So now I'm just in for the ride. I'm just gonna keep doing what I do and hope for the best for people around me and see what it brings. Like I'm just gonna engage, and engagement to me is the outcome ultimately. As long as I keep engaging positively with people, with organizations, with my community, with my family, um, then I don't need to have like any more dreams or potential, right? I'm living in it. I'm living in the now. I'm living in gratitude, living intentionally. So hopefully by the end of 25, I'm still doing this. I'm still doing that. I haven't gone backwards or, taken a hit that I couldn't come back from.
Mhm.
So,
Well, we're all looking forward to seeing what you do in 2025. And that concludes our interview. I really appreciate you, brother. Love you. Thank you for everything you've done for me.
I already know. I love
Yeah.
you too, bro. And appreciate you doing this interview. I tried to get him on camera, but maybe next time we'll take a picture.